Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive. This is the Kristi Elliott story, a story of tragedy and triumph, and how her lawyer, John Alton, and her parents kept her inspired. Stay tuned. The Kristi Elliott story is a remarkable story, partly in due to her lawyer, John Alton. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you.
Tell us how you met Kristi, how this story really developed, and what happened.
I met Kristi shortly after the incident occurred on November 2, 1985 at Mirror Lake at Ohio State University. And I met with her and her parents at the lake, and they told me what occurred, which was a situation after the Ohio State-Iowa football game in which Ohio State happened to beat Iowa, which was number one at the time. And after the game, Kristi was approaching a famous landmark at Ohio State, Mirror Lake, and she saw a friend of hers near the lake, and she approached him with the idea of teasing him and touching him, but he moved, and her momentum carried her into the lake.
This was at nighttime.
Actually, it was more like dusk.
Okay.
It was an afternoon game, and as her momentum propelled her into the lake, being a competitive swimmer, her natural tendency was to convert her unintended entry into the lake into a racing dive.
Right.
Unbeknownst to her, there was a planter in the lake beneath the water, and these planters were inserted in the lake in the 1930s by Ohio State itself for the purpose of water lilies.
Right, and they're not small planters, are they?
These planters are large. They're approximately 14 feet wide. They're semicircular. They go out into the lake approximately 6 to 7 feet. They're about 7 or 8 inches thick, about 12 inches high, and we determined after this incident that they're approximately 10 inches below the surface of the water.
In other words, they're not really visible to the eye, are they?
They're not visible, and Kristi didn't know it was there. She'd never been in the lake prior to this incident, and as she did the racing dive, unfortunately, about 6 feet out, her head came into contact with the inside wall of the planter, and she became an instant quadriplegic.
What happened after that?
Well, this friend went into the water to save her, and she was taken to OSU University Hospital, and she rehabbed in a place called Dodd Hall. And within a few months after that, her parents and she contacted me to meet them at the lake to evaluate potential liability issues against Ohio State.
Now, when you initially filed suit against Ohio State, what was their immediate reaction?
Well, they did not take the case very seriously because, again, Kristi was engaged in some sort of horseplay. We admitted that from the start. And Ohio State really did not know any basis for their own culpability.
But there is an issue in the law called contributory negligence, isn't there?
There is. And in Ohio, even back when we filed the lawsuit in 1986, it was actually called comparative negligence. And the law varies from state to state, but in Ohio, if one is 50% negligent and the defendant, or Ohio State in this instance, is also 50% negligent, one does not recover. However, if Ohio State were 51% negligent and Kristi were 49% negligent, Kristi would recover 49% of any damages assessed by the court.
And when you were trying to figure out whether they were culpable, how negligent they were, how did you go about doing that?
Well, I did a lot of research. What I felt that I had to do, since this was a premises liability case, was to establish not only that Ohio State created the inherently dangerous condition of the planters, but also that Ohio State had notice of this unreasonably dangerous condition by virtue of a prior injury to someone in the lake before Kristi's incident.
Part of being a good lawyer is discovering that information, right?
That's correct.
How did you find that out?
Well, again, this was before the computer age, and I went literally to the main library at Ohio State, and I did the research myself. There's a newspaper at Ohio State that's the student voice of Ohio State called The Lantern, and I reviewed the lanterns going back to the 40s and 50s, and I happened to find a single incident showing a photograph of a guy who injured his head on one of these planters at Mirror Lake.
And as a result of that, the university should have been on notice that they needed to either mark these in the water or remove them, correct?
Correct, and we're talking something that occurred back in the 1950s, and Ohio State did nothing in response to that injury to this other person. And the other thing is that Ohio State had an opportunity to observe this condition that they created, in that they drained the water from the lake every year to remove things such as broken bottles and beer cans and so forth. And the depth of this lake is only about 32 inches at the center of the lake.
So they saw this every year.
They saw they saw this every year. They created the condition themselves back in the 30s, had the opportunity to correct it every year, and were on notice from the 50s on that there had been people injured by an unintended or intended entry into the lake.
Right. Now, the odyssey of this case, and I use that word very, I think, appropriately, odyssey. It was filed in what, 87?
It was actually filed, I believe, in 86. The
86.
incident occurred on November 2, 1985. And then in terms of the legal odyssey, it took 7 years for its culmination.
And I think 6 judges.
There were a lot of judges.
And I think 1 died on the bench.
One died on the bench, and 1 had a stroke after the initial trial and could not sign the judgment entry, fortunately.
And that's a very good point to bring up. I believe at the first trial, Kristi lost, didn't she?
Well, Kristi did lose at the first trial.
But you're saying that the judge did not sign
the judgment entry.
Why wouldn't he do that?
Well, he had a stroke, and he was the decider of fact. This case was tried in what's called the Court of Claims.
Yes.
And the Court of Claims was created by the Ohio legislature in 1976 to provide citizens of Ohio with an opportunity to sue the state of Ohio or any of its subsidiaries, such as state universities.
Yes. And
when the legislators created this statute, it did not provide for a jury trial. So these cases had to be tried to judges. And there were several judges who were appointed by the Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court, Tom Moyer, who were all former judges at the state court level to serve in their 70s in the Court of Claims. And most of these judges went to Ohio State and were very uncomfortable about this case. And so one of the judges, Shoemaker, recused himself or withdrew from the case and assigned the case to Judge Detling, who was a retired 83-year-old probate court judge from a small town in Ohio, and he had no experience in anything like this, and he basically threw us out of court within a day and a half without allowing us to introduce into evidence any of these newspaper articles and photographs showing the prior injury back in the 50s.
So what does a good lawyer do in that case?
Well, first of all, we were devastated. I was embarrassed for the judicial system in Ohio and apologetic to the clients, but within 3 days, I received a call from a clerk at the court's office indicating that Judge Detling had a stroke over the weekend and he was not capable mentally of signing the judgment entry. And since he was the decider of fact and the sole determinant of fact, no one else could substitute for him. So I researched it, filed a motion for new trial. Ohio State could not oppose it because there was no legal basis to oppose it. Judge Leach granted the motion for a new trial, and then we proceeded, and it took maybe 2 more years for the second trial to occur.
Now, something happened in that second trial where the defense counsel for Ohio State made a mistake. Tell us about that.
Well, the main mistake that Ohio State made was that they just assumed that this was a frivolous case, and they did very little in the way of preparation. And they are the assistant attorney generals in the Court of Claims defense section, and they literally put on no evidence in opposition to our evidence.
But did they allow you to, they opened a door where you could get evidence in?
Well, in a sense they did. the one who opened the door was actually Judge Strasbaugh. And again, I referenced Shoemaker, who started this second trial, but then withdrew again on the basis that he and I had a conversation initiated by him about 4 weeks before the second trial, in which he asked me about these underwater planers and why Ohio State had yet to remove them 7 years after this incident. And I said I didn't know. And then when we started the trial, he, on the bench, on the record, indicated that he felt that that conversation that he initiated with me indicated that he might be biased and prejudiced in favor of Kristi. So he indicated that Judge Dean Strasbaugh, whom I knew from previous cases, was available to try the case. And Judge Strasbaugh was fair and allowed me to do what I intended to do in the first trial, which was introduce all the relevant evidence to show that Ohio State was on notice of this condition and was potentially culpable.
Right.
And the goal was to have Judge Strasbaugh rule that Ohio State was 51% or more negligent.
Yeah, it seems so critical amount of evidence, that piece of evidence. Why would the judge not allow it in the first place?
Well, Judge Detling, I don't think had any experience. And to put this in perspective, 30 minutes before the first trial started, Judge Detling called me into his chambers by myself, without the clients, closed the door and said, "What are you doing biting the hand that's feeding you?" And the "you" to which he was referencing were my clients, who were Jim and Bev Montrella, who were the head and assistant women's swimming coaches at Ohio State. And their daughter, Kristi, was on scholarship on the women's swimming team, and Detling, having reviewed the pleadings that we filed, noted this and was absolutely 100% in opposition to the case before we even initiated the evidence.
Now, what was the final verdict?
Well, that's interesting, because in the Court of Claims, the liability and damages issues are always bifurcated. And what I mean by that is split. There is a liability-only trial to determine whether there is any basis for the damages to be determined. And because these are trials to the court or a judge as opposed to a trial to a jury, what happens in the Court of Claims is the judge takes the case under advisement, meaning the judge wants to think about it before the judge writes his decision.
And that is in regards to the liability issue too, right?
Correct. And in fact, that's solely regard to the liability issue.
And how was that decided, percentage-wise?
Well, interestingly, we don't know. What happened was, about 2 months after the trial, I received a call from one of the assistant clerks, Julie Wagner-Rucker, advising that Judge Strasbaugh had made his decision, but she wouldn't tell me what it was. And I felt, by virtue of the conversation, that it was either 50-50 on comparative negligence or 51-49 either direction. And I asked her, "Do you know the decision?" She said, "Yes." I typed it, and she wouldn't tell me. And so then she contacted Ohio State's attorneys, and she indicated to them that Judge Strasbaugh wanted me and the Honorable Judge Robert Duncan, who was then Vice President and General Counsel at Ohio State, to be in his chambers the next morning to settle the case. And neither one of us knew the outcome of his decision.
Right.
And frankly, to this date, I don't know the outcome.
What happened in his chambers?
We had some settlement discussions. Judge Duncan was the first black justice on the Ohio Supreme Court. He was the first black federal judge in the state of Ohio. And then he went to a prominent firm, Jones Day, then went to Ohio State. I had never spoken to Judge Duncan in connection with this case, but I knew him from previous experience with him as a judge. And Ohio State literally had offered no money until that moment, and this is 8 years after the incident. Judge Duncan and I shook hands. His opening offer was $750,000. I went back to Kristi and her parents, and we made a counter proposal. And then Judge Duncan and I had another 15-second conversation, and he offered $1.2 million. And then I came back with $1.5 million, and then we decided to split it in the middle at $1.375 million. And again, without knowing the outcome of the decision, it was difficult to know what to do. But I had some discussions with Gary Brewer of a structured settlement company regarding annuities, and we did that the night before with Kristi and her parents, and we had some ideas as to what might work for her
Financially, to take care of her the rest of her life.
Yes, and thankfully,
Yeah.
that money that we put into the annuity has taken care of her from 1993 until the present date without her having to borrow a dime.
Before we meet her, we're going to roll a video of some of the amazing things that she's done. In fact, she does something that I wouldn't do, and that's skydive. She has an amazing relationship with her dog, which is a great helper, and she's even done coaching, you know, for the swim team. She's an inspiration. Let's go to that right now.
Kristi Elliott's life changed in one split second.
It really never crossed my mind that I was paralyzed. And I don't remember anybody ever coming in to the hospital, or even my parents, telling me, Kristi, you're paralyzed and you will never walk again.
The accident happened 6 years ago when a friend of a friend pushed Kristi into some shallow water.
Turned out to be a nice day.
Kristi Elliott's life changed in one split second.
This is my office / guest room.
Okay. Now, you are able to operate your computer.
I am.
So you're able to use a keyboard, everything like that,
Yeah,
right?
so I go in here. It's that, you know, I have somebody that comes in the morning for a couple hours, 2 hours.
You do.
I do.
That helps you
Get up.
get up,
Yeah.
get ready, and stuff like that.
Yeah, so they do everything for me. They transfer me. They help me with my shower. They help me with my bowel and bladder. They get me dressed. They do my hair. They do my makeup.
Okay.
They do the dogs. And then they're gone and I'm on my own for the rest of the day. You're the one that's responsible for making your life what you want it to be. You know, taking that negative thing and turning it into a positive thing.
Kristi, thank you for being with us today. You're an inspiration to me and everybody watching this show today. What inspires you? You know, what drives you?
Just trying to have the best life I can have and make the best out of what I was given. I want my family and friends to be proud of me and what I do, and I just feel like the alternatives are a lot worse than, like if I was miserable, it would be a lot worse than what it is now.
John has been a big inspiration to you. I
Yes.
know he's been there for you, how many years?
Well, we met in 1985 or 86, shortly after the incident.
What to you, what's the most impressionable thing that you know of Kristi?
Just the positive attitude. I noticed from day one that she was a lot more upbeat than most of us without any type of disability. And I've known her now 23 or 24 years, and if anything, she's not only the same, but even more positive with a great sense of humor and a great attitude than when I saw her initially. But she's an inspiration to me because I have a tendency to get a little up and a little down from time to time, and she's in a lot of ways more level than most of the rest of us.
I bet you there's some favorite questions you like asking her, aren't you?
Sure. Kristi, what is it that makes you as positive as you are?
I don't.
Were you always this positive
No.
before the incident?
No. The accident definitely has made me, I think, a better person, more compassionate, more wanting to please others, wanting to help others. I don't know where it comes from. At times I'm surprised that I don't get down more. But it just is something that comes from within. I don't know.
Two of your best friends are your dogs, aren't they?
Yes.
One is Hassie, and what's your other dog's name?
Harley.
Tell us why they're your best friends.
Well, Hassie is definitely my girl. I've had her for the last 11 years, and she has just been the best gift I've ever been given. I mean, she's probably part of my motivation, you know. I just, you know, as the saying goes, I want to be the person my dog thinks I am.
You're trying to live up to your dog's expectations.
I am. She thinks I'm the best, and I've got to live up to that. So she, you know, she's just the best, and I want to get out there and explore things and share them with her. Harley was a rescue that I adopted 6 months ago. Had no intention of adopting a dog, but went on the website, saw that he was 13, very neglected, severely neglected, and figured nobody wanted him, and took him in. And he's a handful, but he's awesome.
There's an organization that you got Hassie from. What is that organization?
It's called Canine Companions for Independence, and they raise service dogs to help with the disabled as well as people who are deaf.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're amazing. You take on responsibilities that even I wouldn't, and most people wouldn't. And I really want to thank you for coming here today, because you're an inspiration to me.
Thank you.
And you're an inspiration to everybody who's watching this show.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am very pleased to introduce the parents of Kristi, Jim and Bev Montrella. Welcome to the show, Bev.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thank you.
You know, I'm amazed at Kristi, and one of the things that keeps going through my mind is she was a swimmer. She had a competitive spirit about her, an athletic spirit, and both you do too. Both of you have been coaches at Ohio State, correct?
That's correct.
In fact, you're back in there teaching, aren't you?
Teaching,
coaching?
Swimming again.
Really?
Actually.
Do you find that, you know, when tragedy strikes you, you know, and you really literally have to get the, you know, the gumption to get going again, do you find that competitive spirit that you've used all your life, do you find that helpful?
I would say so. When you've coached as long as we have, which is our entire professional career, it's always goal setting.
Yes.
And whatever you have to face at that moment in time, you've got to get by it quick in order to make any progress. And I think probably you're very right. Kristi picked that up as part of her swimming background.
But it's also that constant reminder, because when you're coaching people in any sport, they get injured. And what do you tell an injured athlete? You know, work it out, you'll get over it, let's get back into the, rather than giving up. The words give up never appear, do they?
No, no. Jim especially was very proactive right from the very beginning as far as her care. And at the time when she was first injured, or not maybe first injured, but when they're fitting her for a chair and various things, they only wanted to work with the left side because that had more function. Mm-hmm. And both of us, but probably more Jim, insisted that they work equally with the right and the left side to give her balance.
So the doctors were telling you they only wanted to work with one side.
Doctors and therapists.
You know,
they wanted that limitation. They wanted to put it in a box.
Yeah, well, that's great thinking, because you were thinking, I can do this if I want to, right?
That's right.
That was the spirit. Do you still find yourselves inspiring her, or she inspires you too, doesn't she?
I think at this point she's an inspiration to us. I think it's reversed itself.
Really?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, she is way ahead of the curve for anybody her age and experience, intellect, in sizing up things very quickly now. She's much more intuitive to the little things that we would overlook.
In other words, you're getting advice from her these days?
It's 50-50 at least.
Well, you know,
yeah, but she is inspiring.
Usually the parenting job kind of ends when the kids are 18, or, you know, they come back occasionally and ask you, but your parenting job has gone on and on and on, and basically it's served both of you well, hasn't it?
I would think so.
Not only you, but also Kristi.
And although she's not with us right now, she's in another state, but her sister plays a very big role in her life as well, even though they do it on the telephone,
No kidding.
Her younger sister.
No kidding.
Yeah,
well,
there's
you guys,
a lot of stability there.
Your whole family's an inspiration, and I'm glad you could come here today to share a few moments with us and Kristi's story, because she's a remarkable lady, and you guys are remarkable parents. John, the Kristi Elliott case is just one of the cases that you handle. What other type of cases does your law firm handle, look for, and after so many years of practicing law, really like to get involved with?
Well, I've been involved primarily in medical malpractice cases since 1977. And initially, I represented doctors and hospitals for 16 years.
On the other side of the fence.
I did. And then in March of 1994, shortly after this case concluded, Kristi was the inspiration for me to switch sides full time. And I had been headhunted by a good friend of mine to do so. And
Really?
a year prior to that, I said no, I didn't have the guts. I had never handled a case of Kristi's magnitude until her case. And after her case resolved, I felt that constitutionally I was built more to represent David versus Goliath than corporate America that I'd represented for 16 and a half years. So
gives you a good feeling at the end of the day, huh?
it's totally different. Even though your contingent fee or commission sales or however you want to view it, and there's no guarantees, and the cost advances typically come out of your back pocket or your line of credit, you feel like you're helping people who need help who otherwise would not be able to advance their position.
I think that makes you a better lawyer because you're more passionate about what you believe in, rather than being a corporate lawyer who's just getting paid an hourly wage, right, hourly rate fee, and they're just doing what they're told. They may not have their heart into it.
That's the way I feel. Conviction of the Heart by Kenny Loggins is one of my favorite songs, and Leap of Faith is as well. And to some extent, Kristi's case was a leap of faith, but I've always been passionate. I'm an athlete. I still am, and you know, to me, the same feeling that I had in the pit of my stomach as an athlete is the feeling that I have on behalf of clients in the courtroom. And I don't know. I feel much more positive about what I've done the last 15 years on behalf of people like Kristi. Not that I had anything against what I did for a living. My father was my inspiration. He was actually a plaintiff's attorney his first 7 years out of law school, and then he needed to put food on the table and joined Gundy Lane in 1957. That's where I started in 77. But when I told him I was ready to switch sides, he was my #1 fan. He said, "Go for it. You've walked in my shoes.
Yeah.
You know, go try your own shoes." Totally independent of me, and that's what I did.
What is your website?
My website is just johnalton.com. And then I have a partner named Craig Barkley, and we actually have two websites. His is craigbarkley.com, mine's johnalton.com. Both of those reference Craig and me and tell the public a little bit about us.
And what's the best phone number to get a hold of you guys?
Well, the direct number is area code 614-221-6751.
Right. And you're located in?
I'm located in Columbus, Ohio. I'm contemplating offices in Florida, but as well. But I'm located in Columbus, Ohio, and I handle cases not only in Ohio but throughout the United States through something called Pro Hoc Vice, which enables a lawyer in a particular state to retain me to come in and then ask the judge, is it permissible for John to handle this case?
Right.
And the answer is always yes.
One of the reasons I do these shows is because I want the world, the public, to know about good, very good trial lawyers, and you're one of them, and I want to thank you very much for being on this program and bringing us Kristi Elliott. She's an inspiration, and you did a great job.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you for watching. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.tv. Come back again.